On my birthday, I received an unexpected surprise from my family. Upon arriving at the restaurant, my son's wife announced, "This is your final meal before moving to the nursing home." I smiled and calmly replied, "And this is your last meal having a roof over your head." The next day, I was delighted to have you here. Follow my story to the end and comment from which city you're watching me. This way I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Robert Martinez and I'm 67 years old. I never imagined that my birthday would become the most humiliating moment of my life, but also the day that would change everything forever. It was a Friday evening when I arrived at the Golden Oak, that elegant restaurant downtown where we had celebrated so many special occasions. Marcus, my 42-year-old son, had called me that morning with that sweet voice he used when he wanted something. "Dad, we want to celebrate your birthday in style. You deserve something special." I should have suspected something. Marcus hadn't been particularly attentive to me in recent years, not since Rebecca entered his life. But part of me, that part that always hopes for the best from the people you love, wanted to believe that maybe things were changing. I put on my favorite navy suit, the one my late wife, Elena, always said made me look distinguished. I groomed myself carefully, combed my silver hair, and wore the watch Elena had given me on our 25th anniversary. I wanted to look good for my family. When I arrived at the restaurant, I saw Marcus and Rebecca already seated at a table near the window. He looked nervous, fidgeting with his napkin, avoiding my gaze. Rebecca, on the other hand, was radiant. She wore a striking red dress and that smile I had learned to distrust over the years. "Happy birthday, Robert," said Rebecca with a voice too loud, too sweet. She approached and gave me a hug that felt as fake as her smile. Marcus stood up and kissed my cheek. "Happy birthday, Dad." We sat down and ordered dinner. For a moment, everything seemed normal. We talked about the weather, Marcus's work, Rebecca's plans to redecorate the house. Their house, the house they lived in that I had been paying for years without them knowing. It was after the main course when Rebecca decided to strike. "Robert," she began, dabbing her lips with her napkin, "Marcus and I have been talking, and we think it's time to have an important conversation with you." Something in her tone put me on alert. The way she said Marcus and I, as if they were a unit against me. The way her eyes gleamed with barely contained malice. "What do you want to talk about?" I asked, though part of me already knew. Rebecca exchanged a glance with Marcus, who nodded nervously. It was obvious they had rehearsed this. "Well," Rebecca continued, "we believe it's no longer safe for you to live alone. You've had some memory lapses lately." Memory lapses? What memory lapses? My mind was as clear as ever. I managed my finances, cooked, cleaned, read 4 books a week. But I stayed quiet, wanting to hear how far this charade would go. "We found the perfect place for you," Rebecca continued, her voice now taking on a condescending tone that made me clench my fists under the table. "Sunset Gardens is a beautiful senior living facility. You'll have 24-hour companionship, medical care, activities." "A nursing home," I said quietly. "An assisted living facility," Marcus corrected quickly, finally finding his voice. "Dad, we just want what's best for you." I looked at my son, this man I had raised with so much love after his mother died 8 years ago. This boy who used to run into my arms when he had nightmares, who asked me to read him stories before bed, who told me that when he grew up he would marry me because I was the best dad in the world. "We've already made the arrangements," Rebecca announced triumphantly. "You can move in on Monday. We'll take care of packing your things." It was then that something inside me broke. Not from sadness, but from clarity. I saw everything with crystal precision. The years of subtle manipulation, the way Rebecca had gradually pulled Marcus away from me, the times they had forgotten to invite me to family dinners, the conversations that stopped abruptly when I entered a room. "So this is my last dinner as a free man," I said, keeping my voice calm. Rebecca smiled, thinking she had won. "Don't see it that way, Robert. Think of it as the beginning of a new chapter." I took a sip of my wine, savoring it. Then I placed the glass on the table and looked directly into Rebecca's eyes. "You're right, dear. This is my last dinner with you." I paused, watching her smile begin to waver. "And this is your last dinner with a house to live in." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus blinked, confused. Rebecca went pale. "What do you mean?" asked Rebecca, her voice now less certain. I smiled. The first genuine smile of the entire evening. "Tomorrow you'll find out." I stood up, took my wallet, and left enough money to cover the bill. As I walked away, I could hear Rebecca speaking harshly to Marcus, but their voices faded as I left the restaurant. That night, sitting in my living room, surrounded by photos and memories of a life lived, I picked up my phone and dialed a number I had memorized. "Mr. Thompson," I said when my lawyer answered. "This is Robert Martinez. I need you to come over early tomorrow. It's time for my family to learn the truth about my properties." After hanging up, I poured myself a glass of wine. Tomorrow, Rebecca and Marcus would discover that the confused old man they wanted to lock away in a nursing home was actually the owner of the house they lived in, and much more than they had ever imagined. Saturday morning dawned clear and cold. I got up early, as I always have, and made coffee. While waiting for Mr. Thompson to arrive, I reviewed all the documents I would need for what was about to come. For years, I had kept secret the true extent of my properties. Elena and I had been shrewder than our family imagined. While they saw a retired widower living off his pension, I had been wisely investing in real estate throughout the city. The house where Marcus and Rebecca lived was just the beginning. Mr. Thompson arrived at 9 o'clock sharp, always punctual. William Thompson had been our family lawyer for 15 years, a discreet man who understood the value of silence. "Good morning, Robert," he greeted me, placing his briefcase on my dining room table. "I suppose the time has finally come to act." "Yes," I replied, pouring him a cup of coffee. "I can't keep pretending anymore." We had talked about this possibility many times over the past few years. William had witnessed how Rebecca had gradually been pulling Marcus away from me, and had prepared several legal scenarios to protect my interests. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked me, though we both knew there was no turning back. "After what happened last night, I have no choice." I told him about the dinner, about the nursing home, about the coldness with which they had planned to get rid of me. William listened in silence, nodding occasionally. "Very well," he said finally. "We'll start with the eviction notice. Since you are the actual owner of the house on Oak Street, you have every legal right." The house on Oak Street. Marcus and Rebecca had lived there for 6 years, believing it was theirs. What they didn't know was that when they got into financial trouble 4 years ago, I had quietly paid off their mortgage to prevent them from losing the house. The bank had transferred the deed to my name, but I never told them. "How long do they have to vacate?" I asked. 30 days is legal, but we can shorten it to a week if we argue breach of lease agreement." "What lease agreement?" William smiled. "The one we'll draw up right now, backdated 4 years. A contract that stipulates that the lease can be terminated immediately in case of disrespect or threats toward the landlord." While signing the documents, I couldn't help but think about how things had gotten to this point. I remembered when Marcus first brought Rebecca home 7 years ago. She was charming then, or at least made a great effort to seem so. "Your dad is amazing," she had told me that first dinner. "I hope we can be very close." And at first she seemed sincere. She helped me in the kitchen. She asked about Elena. She seemed genuinely interested in learning about our family history. But gradually, things began to change. First came the subtle suggestions that maybe Marcus visited me too much. "He needs to cut the apron strings a little, don't you think?" she had told me once, laughing as if it were a joke. But it wasn't a joke. Then came the criticisms wrapped in concern. "Robert, are you sure you should be driving at your age?" Or, "I worry about you living alone. What if you fall and no one finds you?" Marcus, my sweet Marcus, had begun repeating these concerns as if they were his own. "Done," announced William, putting the documents in his briefcase. "The eviction papers will be delivered Monday morning. I've also prepared letters for the bank, canceling all the automatic transfers you've been making for their expenses." This was another thing Rebecca and Marcus didn't know. For the past few years, I had been quietly paying many of their expenses. Rebecca's car, the vacation they had taken last year, even some of the expensive furniture Rebecca had bought for their house. And the service cuts also on Monday. Electricity, water, gas, internet, everything was in your name, so legally you have the right to cancel the services. I felt a pang of sadness for Marcus. Despite everything, he was still my son. But I also felt something stronger. Determination. They had crossed a line last night and there was no going back. After William left, I sat in my kitchen with a second cup of coffee and my phone. I knew I would have to act quickly before Rebecca had time to manipulate the situation in her favor. I dialed Marcus's number. He answered on the third ring. "Dad, are you okay? You left very quickly last night." His voice sounded genuinely worried, and for a moment my resolve wavered. This was my boy, the baby I had carried in my arms, the child I had comforted during nightmares. "Marcus, I need you to come home. Just you. There's something important we need to discuss. It can't wait. Rebecca and I were going to look at houses for you near the nursing home. I mean near Sunset Gardens." And there it was. Even now, after publicly humiliating me, they were still moving forward with their plans as if my opinion didn't matter. "No, Marcus, it can't wait. Come now, or on Monday you'll discover some things in a much less pleasant way." There was a long pause. "Dad, you're scaring me." "You should be scared. Come alone, Marcus. If you bring Rebecca, I won't open the door." I hung up before he could respond. While I waited, I walked through my house. This house that Elena and I had bought when Marcus was 7 years old. Every corner held memories. The mark on the wall where Marcus had measured his height every birthday. The stain on the carpet where he had spilled grape juice when he was 9. The photo of his college graduation where he smiled proudly with his diploma. Where had it gone wrong? At what point had my son decided that I was a burden instead of his father? The doorbell rang exactly 45 minutes later. I opened the door and saw Marcus standing there, nervous and confused. "Hello, Dad." "Come in," I said, stepping aside. He sat on the couch where he had watched 1,000 Disney movies with me when he was a child. I sat across from him in Elena's chair. "Marcus," I began, "there are many things you don't know about me, about your mother, about our financial situation. Dad, if this is about money for the nursing home, I already told you Rebecca and I will take care of it." "Your house," I interrupted him. "The house where you live with Rebecca. Do you know who the real owner is?" Marcus frowned. "It's ours. We have the mortgage." "No, Marcus, you don't." I took out the documents William had left and handed them to him. I watched as his eyes moved across the pages, as his expression changed from confusion to shock. This can't be true. "When you were going to lose the house 4 years ago, I paid off the entire debt. The bank transferred the deed to me. You've been living on my property for 4 years. Marcus went pale. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because I thought it was my son living there. I thought someday you would understand what I had done for you." My voice broke slightly. "But last night I realized I don't have a son. I have a stranger who wants to lock me in a nursing home to get rid of me." "Dad, it's not like that. It's not like that." I stood up, walking to the window. "Marcus, when was the last time you came to visit me without needing money or something? When was the last time you called me just to see how I was?" The silence was my answer. "Monday," I said without turning to look at him. "You'll receive an official eviction notice. You have 1 week to find another place to live." "Dad, you can't do this. We're family." I finally turned to face him. "Last night, in that restaurant, you made it very clear that I'm no longer family. Now you're going to discover the consequences of that decision." Sunday morning, while I had my coffee and read the newspaper as I always did, my phone started ringing nonstop. I didn't recognize the first number, but I answered anyway. "Robert, this is Sarah, Rebecca's sister." The voice was harsh, accusatory. "I can't believe what you're doing to my sister and your own son." So Rebecca's campaign had already begun. I had expected it. "Good morning, Sarah. I didn't know you had my number." "Rebecca gave it to me." "She's devastated, Robert. How can you be so cruel to your own family?" I leaned back in my chair, preparing for what I knew would be a long conversation. Did Rebecca tell you about Friday's dinner? She told me they were trying to help you, to find you a safe place to live, and that you reacted like a madman. A madman? Of course, that would be Rebecca's narrative. Did she tell you that they announced they were going to put me in a nursing home without even asking my opinion? Robert, at your age, it's normal to need help. Sarah, I interrupted her. I'm 67 years old, not 97. I manage my own finances, cook, clean, read, drive. There's absolutely nothing wrong with my mind. But Rebecca told me you've been forgetting things, that sometimes you don't recognize people. Lies. All lies. But I realized Rebecca had been building this narrative for months, maybe years, preparing the ground for this moment. Sarah, have you ever talked to me directly about these supposed memory problems? There was a pause. Well, no, but because if I had them, don't you think someone should have talked to me first before deciding my future? After Sarah came Rebecca's mother. Then a cousin of Marcus's I had barely seen in years. Then Rebecca's best friend. All with the same story. Robert had become senile and cruel and was punishing his poor family for trying to care for him. By noon, I had received 14 similar calls. Rebecca had been very busy. It was then that the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw a car I didn't recognize. When I opened the door, I found an older woman, elegantly dressed with a stern expression. Are you Robert Martinez? Yes. I'm Dr. Patricia Williams, geriatrician. Your daughter-in-law contacted me very concerned about your mental well-being. She asked me to come evaluate you. I felt as if I had been slapped. Rebecca had gone so far as to bring a doctor to my house without my consent. I didn't request any evaluation, I said firmly. Mr. Martinez, I understand it can be confusing, but sometimes people with cognitive deterioration don't realize they need help. Dr. Williams, right? I kept my voice calm but firm. I appreciate that you came, but I'm not going to allow you to enter my house without a legal order. If my daughter-in-law is so concerned about my mental well-being, she can follow the appropriate legal channels. The doctor seemed surprised by my clear and direct response. Sir, your family is genuinely concerned. My family, I said, announced to me Friday night that they were going to put me in a nursing home without consulting me. That doesn't sound like genuine concern. It sounds like manipulation. After the doctor left, I sat in my kitchen trembling, not from fear, but from rage. Rebecca wasn't going to stop. She was willing to have me declared mentally incompetent to get her way. I immediately called William. Robert, what's happening? I told him about the calls, about the doctor, about the entire discrediting campaign Rebecca had orchestrated. This is more serious than I thought, said William. If she manages to get enough testimonies that you're mentally incompetent, she could legally challenge your decisions about the properties. Can she do that? It's difficult, but not impossible, especially if she convinces Marcus to cooperate. My heart sank. Marcus, my own son, could testify against me if Rebecca convinced him. What can I do? We need to act faster than planned, and we need medical documentation that proves your mental competence. That afternoon, William arranged an emergency appointment with Dr. Rodriguez, my primary care physician for the past 12 years, and also with a neuropsychologist for a complete cognitive evaluation. Meanwhile, the calls kept coming. Some distant relatives, neighbors Rebecca had contacted, even some of my former colleagues from the school where I had taught before retiring. The most painful was from my brother Thomas, who lives in another state. Robert. His voice sounded worried. Marcus called me. He told me you've been acting strangely, that you threw them out of their house for no reason. Their house, I repeated bitterly. Yes, their house. Robert, is it really necessary to be so drastic? They're your family. Thomas, do you think I would lose my mind suddenly? Well, no, but aging can be. I'm 67 years old, Thomas, the same age as you. That made him quiet for a moment. Look, I continued, I'm going to email you some documents. I want you to see the real situation before judging me. That night, I prepared a complete information package. Copies of property deeds, bank statements, the history of payments I had made for Marcus and Rebecca, even audio recordings I had secretly made during some of our recent conversations, where Rebecca had been particularly cruel. I sent it not only to Thomas, but to several key family members. I wanted them to see the evidence before Rebecca could completely poison their minds. Monday morning came even earlier than expected. At 7 a.m. my phone rang. It was Marcus, and he sounded frantic. "Dad, there's a man at our door with legal papers. He says we have to vacate the house." "Yes," I said simply. "How could you do this? How could you call the police as if we were criminals?" "Marcus, I didn't call the police. I called a sheriff to deliver a legal eviction notice. There's a big difference." "But we're your family." "Last night, your wife brought a doctor to my house without my permission to have me declared mentally incompetent. That was also because we're family." Silence. "Marcus," I continued, "Rebecca has been calling all our acquaintances to tell them I'm crazy. She's been building a case to take away control of my own decisions. Did you know that?" More silence. "Dad," he finally said, his voice smaller, "Rebecca says she just wants to protect you." "From whom is she protecting me, Marcus?" "From yourself. She says you could hurt yourself living alone, that you could be a victim of scammers." "Marcus, listen to yourself. You're repeating your wife's words like a parrot. When was the last time you had an original thought about your father?" The line was quiet for so long I thought he had hung up. "I don't know," he whispered finally. "That's the most honest answer you've given in years." After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen, looking out the window at the garden Elena and I had planted together. I felt lonelier than I had felt since she died, but I also felt something I hadn't felt in years. Free. Free from pretending everything was okay. Free from pretending I cared about Rebecca. Free from tiptoeing around Marcus's feelings. The phone rang again. This time it was William. "Robert, I have news. Marcus just called my office. He wants to meet with me this afternoon." "For what?" "He didn't say, but I can imagine. Probably Rebecca is pressuring him to legally challenge the eviction." I straightened in my chair. "Can he do that?" "He can try, but I have some surprises for him if he decides to go that route." "What kind of surprises?" "I prefer not to say over the phone, but let's say that your investigation into family finances has revealed some very interesting things about Rebecca's spending in recent years." After hanging up, I realized the war was just beginning. Rebecca wasn't going to give up easily, and apparently she was willing to use Marcus as her weapon. But I also had weapons, and unlike Rebecca's, mine were loaded with the truth. That afternoon, while waiting for news from William's meeting with Marcus, I received an unexpected call. "Mr. Martinez, this is Detective Johnson from the local police. We've received a report that you might be in danger." My blood froze. "What kind of danger?" "Your daughter-in-law called this morning very concerned. She says you've been acting erratically, and she fears you might harm yourself or others." Rebecca had played her dirtiest card. She was trying to get me arrested. Detective Johnson arrived at my house an hour after his call. He was a middle-aged man with gentle but alert eyes. I invited him in and served him coffee while he discreetly assessed my mental state and environment. "Mr. Martinez," he began, "I must admit that after speaking with you on the phone and seeing you now in person, I see no evidence of any erratic or dangerous behavior." "Because there isn't any," I replied calmly. "Detective, I'm in the middle of a very ugly family dispute, and my daughter-in-law is using every possible resource to make me look like a senile old man." I showed him all the documentation, the property deeds, recent medical records, even the audio recordings where you could clearly hear how Rebecca spoke about me with contempt. "This paints a very different picture," the detective admitted after reviewing everything. "Have you considered getting a restraining order against your daughter-in-law?" "Can I do that?" "If you can prove harassment or threats, yes. And from what I see here, you have a solid case." After the detective left, I felt exhausted but also relieved. At least the authorities could see I wasn't crazy. But I knew Rebecca wouldn't stop there. I didn't have to wait long to discover what her next move would be. That night, While organizing some documents in my study, I found something that chilled my blood. In an old box of important papers, I discovered that things were missing. My mother's jewelry, which I kept in a small bag inside the box, had disappeared. Also missing was a pearl necklace Elena had given me for our 15th anniversary. Wait, that Elena had received from me. With my heart pounding, I checked the entire box. My grandmother's diamond brooch, the emerald earrings I had inherited from my aunt, even my gold graduation watch. Everything had disappeared. I immediately called William, even though it was already 10 p.m. "Robert, what's happening?" "William, someone stole my jewelry. The most valuable pieces have disappeared from my safe. Who else has access to your house?" "Only Marcus. He has emergency keys since Elena died." There was heavy silence on the line. "Robert, I'm going to ask you something and I need you to be completely honest with me. When was the last time you checked that jewelry?" I thought for a moment. "About 6 months ago when I took them out for the anniversary of Elena's death." "And since then? How many times has Marcus come to your house when you weren't there?" My stomach sank. Marcus came often when I went shopping or to my medical appointments. He said he wanted to check that everything was okay, that there were no problems with the pipes or electricity. I thought it was sweet of him to worry. "William, are you suggesting that Marcus stole my jewelry?" "I'm suggesting that tomorrow morning we go to all the pawn shops in the city with photographs of those pieces." I didn't sleep at all that night. I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to process the possibility that my own son had stolen my mother's jewelry, Elena's gifts, the family heirlooms I had planned to leave him someday. At 7 a.m., William arrived with a private investigator named Mr. Garcia. We had prepared photographs of all the missing pieces and a list of the city's best-known pawn shops. We didn't have to search much. At the third pawn shop we visited, the owner immediately recognized the photos. "Yes, these pieces. A young man brought them about 3 months ago. He said they belonged to his grandmother, who had died, and the family needed money quickly." "Can you describe the man?" asked Mr. Garcia. "Brown hair, about 40 years old, well-dressed, very nervous. He brought a woman with him, blonde, very put together." My heart broke completely. Marcus and Rebecca had sold my family's jewelry. "How much did you pay them for everything?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The man checked his records. $8,000. The jewelry was easily worth $35,000, but they had accepted a fraction of its real value because they needed money quickly. "What did they say they needed the money for?" asked William. "The man said something about a trip they had to pay for. The woman mentioned something about a spa resort." "A spa resort." I remembered that 3 months ago, Rebecca had posted photos on social media of a luxurious vacation they had taken. She had bragged about the 5-star hotel, the spa treatments, the elegant dinners, vacations paid for with my family's jewelry. We obtained copies of all the documentation and transaction records. Mr. Garcia also got the security camera recordings that clearly showed Marcus and Rebecca selling my belongings. Back at my house, I sat in the kitchen and cried for the first time since all this had begun. I didn't cry for the jewelry, even though they were irreplaceable. I cried for my son, for the man he had become, for the realization that nothing remained of the sweet boy I had raised. William let me cry for a few minutes before speaking softly. "Robert, there's more." I looked up, wiping away my tears. "More what?" Mr. Garcia did some additional research into Marcus and Rebecca's finances. He found some troubling things. He handed me a folder full of documents, bank statements, credit card records, credit reports. "They have debts of more than $90,000, William continued. "Mainly credit cards and a personal loan Marcus took 6 months ago." $90,000. What did they spend so much money on? Designer clothes, jewelry for Rebecca, the car she drives, expensive home renovations, vacations. They've been living far beyond their means. I reviewed the documents, seeing charge after charge for unnecessary luxuries. Thousands of dollars in clothes, thousands more in expensive restaurants, credit card bills that made my head hurt. "And there's something else," William said quietly. "Marcus has been taking money from your checking account without your knowledge." What? Since he's the designated beneficiary in case of your death, the bank gave him emergency access to the account a year ago when you were hospitalized for that pneumonia. They never revoked it. I was breathless. How much has he taken? About $15,000 in the last 10 months. Small amounts each time, probably hoping you wouldn't notice. I stood up and walked to the window, trying to process this betrayal. My son had not only stolen my family jewelry, but had also been stealing money directly from my bank account. "William," I said finally, "I want to press charges for theft." "Robert, are you sure? Once you do this, there's no going back. Marcus could go to jail." I turned to look at him. "My son no longer exists. The man who sold his grandmother's jewelry for a luxury vacation is not the child I raised." That afternoon, while William prepared the legal documents, I received a call from Thomas, my brother. "Robert, I received the documents you sent me. I can't believe what I've been reading. Now do you believe me?" "Oh, brother, I'm so sorry. I had no idea things were so bad." I told him about the stolen jewelry and the money they had taken from my account. "My God," Thomas whispered, "you have to do something. This can't continue." "I'm already doing something. Tomorrow I'm pressing criminal charges against Marcus." "Against your own son?" "Thomas, my son died a long time ago. What's left is a stranger who sees me as a source of money." That night Marcus called. His voice sounded different, more desperate. "Dad, we need to talk." "I think we've talked enough." "Please, Dad. There are things you don't understand. Rebecca says she can explain everything." "Marcus, I found the jewelry. Well, I didn't exactly find it. I found where you sold it. I have the security recordings, the receipts, everything." Total silence on the line. "Dad, I can explain." "What can you explain? How you stole your grandmother's jewelry to pay for a vacation? How you've been taking money from my bank account for almost a year? How did you know about the money?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Because unlike what you and your wife think, I'm not a senile old man. I'm a 67-year-old man with all my mental faculties intact, and I notice when I'm being robbed. Dad, please, we can pay it all back. We just need time." "Marcus, tomorrow I'm pressing criminal charges against you for theft. I suggest you get a lawyer." I hung up before he could respond. Wednesday morning I woke up to the sound of someone violently pounding on my door. I looked at the clock, 6:30 a.m. I put on a robe and went to see who it was. Through the peephole I saw Rebecca, but not the perfectly groomed Rebecca I knew. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, and she was wearing the same clothes from the day before. She looked desperate. "Robert, open the door. We need to talk." I didn't open it. Instead, I spoke through the door. "Rebecca, it's 6:30 in the morning. Get off my property. I'm not leaving until you talk to me. This is insane. You can't destroy your own family like this." My family destroyed itself. The pounding became louder, more desperate. I called the police. 15 minutes later, a patrol car arrived. I watched through the window as the officer spoke with Rebecca, who gesticulated dramatically, pointing toward my house. Then the officer knocked on my door. "Good morning, Mr. Martinez. I'm Officer Rodriguez. The lady here says she's your daughter-in-law and that she needs to speak with you urgently about a family emergency." "Officer, there's no emergency. This woman and her husband, my son, stole family jewelry valued at more than $35,000. They've also been withdrawing money from my bank account without my permission. Today I'm pressing formal charges against both." The officer looked toward Rebecca, whose face had gone pale. "Is that true, ma'am?" "She's lying. He's senile. He doesn't know what he's saying." I took out the folders William had prepared and showed them to the officer through the partially open door. "Officer, here's all the documentation. The security recordings from the pawn shop, the sales receipts, the bank records showing the unauthorized withdrawals." The officer reviewed the documents for several minutes. His expression became increasingly serious. "Ma'am," he told Rebecca, "I need you to leave this property immediately. If you don't, I'll arrest you for trespassing." "This is ridiculous. She's my father-in-law. We're family." "Ma'am, family is not an excuse for theft. You have 5 minutes to leave before I call for backup." After Rebecca left, the officer asked if I wanted to press additional charges for harassment. I accepted. 2 hours later, William and I were at the police station filing all the formal documentation. The detective assigned to the case, Detective Silva, meticulously reviewed all the evidence. "Mr. Martinez, this is a very solid case. The video recordings are particularly convincing. What happens now? We'll issue arrest warrants for both Marcus and Rebecca Martinez. They'll probably be arrested before the end of the day." As we left the police station, William put a hand on my shoulder. "Robert, are you sure you want to go through with this?" "William, a week ago I would have said no, but I no longer recognize the man my son has become. The Marcus I knew would never have stolen his grandmother's jewelry to pay for a vacation." That afternoon, I received 3 calls that changed everything. The first was from Detective Silva. "Mr. Martinez, we arrested Marcus Martinez this morning at his work. He cooperated completely and confessed everything. He says he wants to speak with you. As for Rebecca, we haven't found her yet. Apparently she abandoned the house this morning and no one knows where she is." The second call was from Thomas. "Robert, Marcus called me from jail. He's devastated. He says he wants to talk to you, that there are things you need to know about Rebecca." "What kind of things?" "He wouldn't tell me over the phone, but he says Rebecca threatened him, that if he didn't do what she wanted, she would leave him and take everything." The third call was the most shocking. It was from Sarah, Rebecca's sister. "Robert, I need to tell you something about my sister." "Sarah, I don't feel like hearing more lies." "No, listen to me. Rebecca called me this morning hysterical. She confessed everything. The jewelry theft, the money from your account, everything." I sat heavily in my chair. "Robert, my sister is addicted to gambling. She's been betting online for years. The debts they have aren't just from luxuries, they're mainly gambling debts." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Did Marcus know? Not at first. Rebecca told him the money was for other things, but when he discovered the truth a few months ago, she threatened to leave him and tell everyone he had been physically abusing her. Is that true? No. Marcus would never lay a hand on anyone. But Rebecca is very convincing, and he was afraid people would believe her. After hanging up, I sat in my living room trying to process all this information. My son had been manipulated and blackmailed, but that didn't excuse the theft. He had made choices, bad choices, and now he had to face the consequences. That night I decided to visit Marcus in jail. The county jail was a cold and depressing place. Marcus looked terrible when they brought him to the visiting room. He had deep, dark circles under his eyes, had lost weight, and his clothes seemed too big for him. We sat across from each other, separated by a metal table. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. "Dad," he finally said, his voice broken, "I'm so sorry. Marcus, tell me the truth, the whole truth." And then he broke down. He told me everything about Rebecca's gambling debts, about how she had started by betting small amounts online and had escalated to losing thousands of dollars per week. He told me about the threats, about how she had convinced him that if he didn't help her, she would leave him ruined and destroy his reputation. "But Dad, I never wanted to steal from you. Every time I took something, I told myself I would pay you back, that I would find a way to replace it before you noticed. Marcus, you took your grandmother's jewelry that was going to be for your children someday." "I know." Tears began falling down his face. "I know, and I hate myself for it. And the money from my account? Rebecca said it was just a loan, that when she won big we would pay it all back and more." I looked into his eyes, searching for some trace of the child I had raised. "Marcus, at some point during all this, did you think about coming to talk to me? I wanted to 1,000 times, but Rebecca said you would judge us, that you would cut us off completely if you knew about her problems. So instead you decided to cut me off first." Marcus lowered his head. "The nursing home thing. That was Rebecca's idea. She said if you were in a care facility, we could sell your house to pay the debts, that you would be better cared for and we could have a fresh start. And you agreed to that?" "Not at first, but Rebecca kept insisting, saying it was best for everyone. And I..." His voice broke. I was so weak I let her convince me. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Marcus looked up. "Dad, can you ever forgive me?" The question I had been dreading. I looked at my son, this 42-year-old man who had made such terrible decisions, and tried to find an answer. "Marcus, I love you. I will always love you because you're my son. But the man sitting in front of me is not the man I raised. I don't know if I can forgive what you've done, but more importantly, I don't know if you can forgive yourself. Are you going to drop the charges?" "No." Marcus nodded slowly. "I understand. I deserve it." "Marcus, this isn't about what you deserve or don't deserve. It's about consequences. You made choices and now you have to face what comes next." I stood up to leave. "Dad," he called out. I stopped. "What? Could you do something for me?" "What?" "When they find Rebecca, could you make sure she gets help? I know what we did was wrong, but she really has a problem. She needs treatment." I looked at my son one last time. Despite everything that had happened, he still cared about the woman who had destroyed his life and mine. "Marcus, you're not responsible for fixing Rebecca. You're only responsible for fixing yourself." I left the jail feeling strangely empty. I had gotten the answers I needed, but I didn't feel better. If anything, I felt worse knowing that my son had been both victim and perpetrator. But I also felt something else. Determined. Marcus would have to find his own path to redemption. I had done enough for him. It was time to start living for myself. 6 months after that terrible night at the restaurant, I woke up in my own bed, in my own house, completely free. Rebecca was never found. According to Detective Silva, she probably fled the state when she learned that Marcus had been arrested. She had an outstanding arrest warrant, but frankly, I was glad she had disappeared from our lives. Marcus had been sentenced to 10 months in jail and 3 years of probation. He also had to pay me restitution for everything he had stolen. His lawyer had argued for a lighter sentence due to extenuating circumstances, but the judge had been clear. Theft was theft, regardless of excuses. I had attended the sentencing hearing. Marcus had looked at me from the defendant's table, but I didn't look back. Not out of cruelty, but because I had learned that looking backward only prevented me from moving forward. In these 6 months, I had made important changes in my life. First, I hired a part-time caregiver, not because I needed it medically, but because I wanted the peace of mind of having someone trustworthy nearby. Maria, a 55-year-old woman with impeccable references, came every day from 3 to 7 p.m. We cooked together, walked around the neighborhood, and she had become more of a friend than an employee. Second, I had completely rewritten my will. William had made sure it was airtight. The house and all my properties would go to a charitable foundation that helped elderly men who were victims of family abuse. Marcus would receive a small sum, enough to start over when he got out of jail, but nothing more. Third, and perhaps most importantly, I had begun to truly live for the first time in years. I had enrolled in woodworking classes at the community center. It turned out I had a talent for furniture making. I also joined a book club where I had made 3 genuine friends who had become my main social circle. One of them, George, had gone through a similar situation with his daughter years ago. Robert, he had told me during one of our weekly dinners, "The hardest thing to accept is that sometimes our children become strangers. It's not our fault, but we can't fix it either." He was right. For years I had believed that if I just loved Marcus enough, if I was just patient enough with Rebecca, things would improve. But one-sided love can't sustain a toxic relationship forever. One October afternoon, while Maria and I were preparing dinner, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a young woman I didn't recognize. "Mr. Martinez, I'm Laura Johnson, social worker from the correctional center. Could I speak with you about Marcus?" I let her in, curious but cautious. "Mr. Martinez, Marcus has been in our rehabilitation program for the past 4 months. He's made exceptional progress." "I'm glad to hear that. He wants to write you a letter, but he needs your permission to send correspondence. Would you be willing to receive it?" I thought about it for a moment. What would the letter be about? Mainly apologies and the changes he's made. He's also been attending Gamblers Anonymous to better understand what happened with Rebecca. He also had gambling problems. Not directly, but he learned codependent behavior patterns that led him to enable his wife's addiction. I decided to allow the letter. It arrived a week later. It was long, 4 pages of careful handwriting, and I could see that Marcus had put a lot of thought into every word. Dear Dad, I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness after what I did. I know I betrayed your trust in the most fundamental way possible. During these months in jail, I've had a lot of time to think about the decisions I made and the man I became. I want you to know that I'm not writing this letter hoping you'll change your will or forgive me. I'm writing because I need you to know that I finally understand the gravity of what I did. I stole more than jewelry and money. I stole your security, your trust in your own family, your right to age with dignity in your own home. There's no excuse for that. I've been in therapy and have learned about codependency and how I allowed Rebecca's problem to become my problem. But more importantly, I've learned that none of that justifies the decisions I made. When I get out of here in 3 months, I'm not going to try to contact you unless you want me to. I'm going to move to another state and start completely over. I've accepted a job with a non-profit organization that helps families with addiction problems. Dad, I want you to know that the strong, independent man you are has always been my hero. I'm sorry it took me so long to realize that. With love and respect, Marcus P.S. I know I'll probably never see grandmother's jewelry again, but I have all the photos of them that you kept in the family album. If you ever want copies, I can send them to you. After reading the letter, I put it in my desk drawer. I wasn't going to respond, at least not yet. But I was glad to know that Marcus was finally taking real responsibility for his actions. 2 weeks later, Thomas came to visit me from Phoenix. It was the first time we had seen each other in person since everything had begun. You look incredible, he told me, hugging me at the airport. You look free. He was right. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying the weight of worrying about Marcus, of tiptoeing around Rebecca, of pretending everything was okay when it clearly wasn't. During his visit, we went to dinner at the Golden Oak, the same restaurant where it all had begun. Doesn't this bring back bad memories? Thomas asked me as we sat down. On the contrary, I replied. It reminds me of the moment I decided to reclaim my life. That night, the restaurant manager approached our table. Excuse me, aren't you the gentleman who had that incident here a few months ago? I tensed, preparing for more drama. Yes, I am. I wanted to tell you that I really admired how you handled that situation. My staff talks about it sometimes. The way you maintained your dignity while standing your ground was truly impressive. After he left, Thomas and I looked at each other and started laughing. Who would have thought you'd become inspiration for restaurant staff? Said Thomas. Certainly not me. On the way home, Thomas asked me, Do you regret anything? I thought carefully. I regret taking so long to stand up for myself. I regret allowing Rebecca to treat me badly for so many years. But I don't regret the decisions I made once I finally opened my eyes. And Marcus? Marcus is an adult who made adult decisions. The consequences of those decisions are not my responsibility. A month after Thomas's visit, I was in my garden planting bulbs for spring when Maria came out of the house. Robert, there's a young man at the door who says he's your grandson. My heart stopped. I didn't have grandchildren. Marcus and Rebecca had never had children. I went to the door and found a young man about 25 years old with familiar eyes. Mr. Martinez, I'm David. David Martinez. I'm Marcus's son. The world swayed around me. What? Marcus is my father. I never knew about you until recently. My mother and he separated when I was a baby, before he met Rebecca. He found me on social media a few months ago and told me everything that happened. I stood speechless looking at this young man who had the same eyes as Marcus when he was a child. May I come in? There's a lot I'd like to talk to you about. And so, in a twist I never could have imagined, I discovered I had a grandson, a hard-working young man, a college student, who had grown up completely unaware of all our family drama. David became a regular visitor. He was intelligent, respectful, and had a fresh perspective on the whole situation. He didn't excuse his father's actions, but he didn't condemn him completely either. "Grandpa," he told me one afternoon while we had tea in my garden, "I think Dad is finally learning who he really wants to be. And what do you think about all this? I think you did what you had to do, and I think maybe with time our family can find a way to heal." I didn't know if he was right or not, but for the first time in a long time, I had hope. 1 year after that disastrous dinner, I was living the fullest life I had had in decades. I had genuine friends, new hobbies, a growing relationship with a grandson I didn't know existed, and the peace of mind that comes from knowing I would no longer allow anyone to disrespect me. Marcus had gotten out of jail and moved to Colorado as he had promised. He sent me a postcard every month, just so I would know he was okay, but he didn't try to establish a deeper relationship. He respected my boundaries, and that was a beginning. Rebecca remained missing, and frankly, I hoped she would stay that way. One evening, while reading in my living room, I looked at Elena's photo on the table next to me. "I think I finally learned what you were trying to teach me all those years," I told her smiling image, "that I deserve to be treated with respect and dignity, especially by my own family." For the first time since her death, I felt I was truly living, not just existing. My name is Robert Martinez. I'm 68 years old, and finally I am free.